I've always believed in my heart of hearts that astrology is a tool for day-to-day life. So the fact that the younger generations are open to it, they're learning about it, they're reading about it, they're watching videos, and they're kind of like implementing it on a day-to-day basis. Humanity has always guided itself by looking at the stars and watching the stars. There is like this vast like history, like it's more than like 2,000 years old.
Are there some things that aren't written in the stars that we can actually influence through our free will and our actions here? Or how do you see that?
So I don't believe we are fully at the mercy of fate. I do believe that we all have a certain set of soul intentions that we incarnate with. So our soul has chosen to experience certain lessons, to experience maybe certain journeys. I do believe that we carry a certain degree of karma.
Rux, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
Emilio, thank you for having me. First and foremost, thank you for inviting me. So many things. I feel like I'm excited about so many things, and there will be astrologers out there and people into astrology who are going to say, Rux, you're crazy, but I'm excited. Pluto in Aquarius has made an entrance on the global stage. So that's going to be, probably one of the most defining, astrologically speaking, force of the next 2 decades. And here we are. It's only been like 2 years since it sort of like went in and out of Aquarius, and we can already see things shifting dramatically. So that would be on a global level. On a personal level, this is going to sound very basic of me to say, but I'm really happy to be where I am. I'm excited to be where I am. I've been on a journey like so many of us, and I feel like my 20s have been one hell of a ride in good ways, but also in challenging ways. And I feel like now I'm at a place where I can catch my breath. I love doing what I'm doing, so I'm very grateful about being here in my life in its current state.
Love to hear that. And I know that you have 3 planets in Aquarius. So that has been a sign or an energy, a frequency that's been very defining in your life. And as you're seeing the collective move into, as you said, a defining era with Pluto in Aquarius, knowing that sign on a very personal level, what can you tell us as a glimpse of these next decades that are to come ruled by this Pluto in Aquarius that we're going to begin to start seeing a lot more strongly, especially this year? It begun very, very strongly as well.
Yes, you can say that again. We have to think about the energy of Aquarius, archetypally speaking. So Aquarius in astrology is a fixed air sign. It's the last of the air signs. The air is the element of the intellect, of ideas, of the mind. And there's a book out there that said, the universe is mental. Everything starts in the mind. So as Pluto is kind of like stepping into, and I mean, it's already made an entrance actually, as Pluto is kind of like full force into Aquarius, ideas will shift, principles will change, mentalities will change, the way that we see the world is going to change. And Aquarius is the sign of groups of people, of communities. So entire communities are probably going to go through massive shifts at a mental level. And that will obviously reverberate into the choices that they make, into how they go about their lives. Fixed signs means that the energy is concentrated. It's kind of like focused. It's here to stay. We're building upon things. So the shifts that we're going to see are not temporary. They're probably going to define, yes, they're going to be very active for the next 2 decades, but they're probably going to define hundreds of years from now on. Is there going to be a darker side to that? Yes, I do believe so. I absolutely believe so. And I think it's worth mentioning with Pluto, there's other astrologers who have said it out there, and I'm just reiterating it. Sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. So the collective is sort of like exposed to its shadow. We see certain kind of like darker aspects or aspects of our nature, or in this case, aspects of how certain groups, how certain communities function that we were not aware of. And we might realize, hey, this is this is not really nice. This is not really considerate. This does not have the kind of like highest interest and greatest good in mind. This is sort of powered. Pluto is the planet of power. They're sort of like powered by monetary interests or all sorts of like hidden agendas. So we might become, we're probably not, it's not a question of like might, it's a question of when. We're probably going to become aware of these agendas, and that's going to trigger chain events at a collective level. We can expect essentially entire communities, entire sort of like portions of society to go through these major mindset shifts. I'd say, speaking of power, I mean, Pluto in Aquarius generally says, hey, power to the people, power to the many. So on paper, that sounds fantastic. Maybe it sounds like democracy. But what are you going to do if, for example, minorities are not protected? What are you going to do with that? It's like power to the many, and what about the few? A democracy should also protect the few, not just the many. So yeah, there's multiple facets to Pluto. One thing that we can always sort of expect from Pluto is that it's not a subtle planet. It doesn't just come in sort of like on tiptoe saying, hey, how about do you want a little bit of this? Do you want a taster? Do you want to, I don't know, see if you like it? No, it just sort of focuses its energy a little bit like I hate to mention this, but I'm going to mention it, a little bit like a nuclear bomb. And it says, okay, here's the bomb. It's here. You can't pretend that it hasn't dropped. It has dropped. What now? And from then onwards, the reset, the restart begins, the rebirth begins. Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth, which is why people who are Plutonian, who have Pluto very strongly placed in their natal charts, such as maybe yourself, Emilio, because you've got, I know you have Pluto in your 12th house, but since you're a Sagittarius ascendant, in certain house systems, such as the one that I use, whole sign houses, it's actually in your first house. So what that means is that you can be an actor for change and transformation, but you might also experience significant rebirths throughout your life to the point where it feels like you've lived several lives in one lifetime. So we can extrapolate and say that's going to be the experience for entire kind of like vast swathes of people with Pluto in the sign of groups and communities for the next 2 decades.
And I know you pull on a thread of astrology that you call mundane astrology, which is all about the evolution of world events,
Correct.
Big milestone moments in the evolution of humanity. But a lot of that is based on these outer, slower moving planets, like, you know, the ones that we'll mention here shortly. But you tell us that they highlight the magnitude of what is going on. And especially from this year onward into the next few years, especially 2026, what can you tell us is happening with those slower moving planets that are creating big milestone, I can't say it today, milestone moments for humanity?
Well, Pluto's already in Aquarius, so as much as it's a cliche to repeat it, the technological revolution will continue. It will absolutely continue. AI will continue to change our world as we know it, probably faster than we expect it. We have Uranus going back into Gemini. So right now Uranus is in Gemini. It spent a few months over the summer in the sign of Gemini. It's going to go back into Taurus second week of November until the middle of April of next year. And then it slides back into Gemini, if I'm not mistaken, until 2032. So Uranus in Gemini is going to bring innovation in Gemini fields such as education, commerce, the way that we go to school, the way that we can the way that we absorb information, the way that we can send through information. So anything that has to do with education and communication and the movement and the disseminating of information and ideas. Transportation is going to change dramatically. Gemini is the sign of transportation, so some people are asking me, are we going to see flying cars? I'm like, I would not be surprised. I would absolutely not be surprised over the next 7 years, let's say. So maybe it's not going to be a 2026 thing, but we do have all the way until 2032. Uranus is the kind of lightning bolt of inspiration. And in Gemini, which is another air sign, people are going to have those aha moments. They're like, oh my God, I see things differently. Why did I not think about this before? So we can see big inventions. We might see big breakthroughs in science. So a lot is happening in the air signs. Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini. Saturn and Neptune are going into Aries. Neptune is right now in Aries. It's gonna, again, slide back for a little bit into Pisces and come back into Aries next year in 2026. And Saturn is going back into Aries mid-February. So they're kind of catching up, Saturn and Neptune. They're having a bit of a catch-up February, March of next year. It's something that we've already experienced earlier this year, mid-year. So sometime we felt it May, June. Some would argue that we felt it throughout the entire summer, and you could agree with them also. Saturn wants to build, Neptune wants to dissolve. In Aries, what's it gonna build and dissolve at the same time? So we can sort of expect a dissolution of the old and a building of a new foundation. Well, Aries has to do with leadership. So go figure. We might see the establishment in terms of leadership dissolving to an extent and making room for new ideals. Neptune is all about what we idealize, what we place on a pedestal, right? So Neptune in Aries is going to idealize these new kind of types of leaders, maybe spiritual leaders to an extent. You'd hope. Because there's always the possibility of a darker manifestation to any transit. Saturn comes in, and to an extent, it also kind of limits the ideals, because Neptune can go on a delusional path and say, oh my God, I believe in this world of fantasy, and we're gonna reinvent the wheel, and we're gonna live like in The Sims. And Saturn comes in and says, no, you have to feed your cat today and pay your bills tomorrow, and remember that you need food in your fridge. So I feel like Saturn brings that much needed kind of dose of reality and of anchoring the ideals into what works in the 3D reality. At the same time, Saturn is known for restricting us in some shape or form. A lot of people said when Neptune moved into Aries, it's no, it's going to be like the Civil War once more. Like the last time when Neptune was in Aries, the US went into a civil war, And to that, I actually said, hey, you're forgetting that Saturn's there as well. Saturn's coming in and it's restricting warlike energies. It's not allowing them to run rampant. Yes, we are seeing this sort of trend of countries preparing themselves, or kind of planning or investing more into defense and things like that. But I would actually expect a restriction of warlike activities throughout 2026, 2027, 2028, for as long as Saturn is in Aries. Sure, is it going to lead to the world generally being much more aware of the possibility of conflict and of war? Yes, because Saturn, whatever sign it's transiting, it kind of brings us, I like to call it a burden, but it also, to an extent, prepares us and helps us plan for that type of activity. So Saturn in Aries is going to make us aware of the fact that, yeah, okay, it might not always be peace. Like we've lived in time. I mean, I've lived in times of peace, and I'm very grateful for that. And I know there's many people who might be watching this who are not, maybe not even in this very moment. So Saturn's going to make us aware of the fact that we need to defend ourselves in Aries. At the same time, it's not just going to go sort of like willy-nilly saying, yes, I'm like Jupiter in Aries did that a little bit. The Jupiter in Aries transit actually kind of like fueled conflicts. As much as I'm a big fan of Jupiter and I always sing its praises, and I always like take advantage of the transits of the great benefic Jupiter, but Jupiter in Aries fueled conflicts. The transiting North Node also fueled conflicts when it was going through Aries. And now we've got Saturn. I mean, now it's in Pisces, but it's coming back into Aries. And I would expect a restriction of those kinds of activities, even though we can't pretend that they are not happening. We can't pretend that they haven't been sort of like front and center in the past of our minds, and maybe even like news outlets and people's experiences in certain places around the world. Yeah, Saturn reminds us of our kind of like burden and the work that needs to be done. Saturn and Neptune together in Aries might also fuel our focus on building strong individual defenses, so to speak. So yes, there's obviously all sorts of like alliances around the world, and like politics is all about alliances, and diplomacy is all about like strong partnerships and so on. But with Saturn and Neptune in Aries, 2026, 2027, 2028, at least until Saturn gets out of Aries and moves into Taurus, it may feel sometimes like it's each country for itself in many cases. So it's probably going to fuel that focus on individuality to an extent. And I always think about Aries as the sign of the pioneer. We're going to have to do things for the first time. A lot of people, a lot of countries are probably going to have to do things that they've never done and deal with issues that they've never dealt with before. It's like you have to begin something with the Aries energy. And because Saturn's there, you might just be very afraid to do so, and you might feel very unprepared, and you might feel like you don't have all the resources, and it's taking a long time, and you're impatient, and you want to do it now. So there's going to be that kind of like interesting sort of like push and pull between this has to happen in a sustainable manner that's going to stand the test of time, and also this has to happen fast, which is why Aries is the sign of Saturn's debilitation. So
what's interesting, Rux, about astrology is that a lot of it is also generational, especially in these outer planets. Like you were telling me, oh, your Pluto's in Sag because that's your generation. Yeah. And I was watching a recent interview that said a shocking statistic of 80% of my generation, Generation Z, believes in astrology. And the person that reacted to that, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he was like, he lost all hope for our generation. But you and I, before this, we were talking about how seeing through the lens of astrology is a very interesting way of seeing the world. Mm-hmm. When you take that on a generational level, if you look at the younger generations, and they're all, or mostly the majority, are starting to see the world through an astrological lens, what do you feel like that does or shatters in the collective field when we're changing the way we see our world in this reality?
I personally just love it that the younger generations are way more open to astrology than maybe their parents, their grandparents, their predecessors. I've always believed in my heart of hearts that astrology is a tool for day-to-day life. So the fact that the younger generations are open to it, they're learning about it, they're reading about it, they're watching videos, and they're kind of like implementing it on a day-to-day basis. I think that says a lot about how astrology is going to be used moving forward. As much as maybe the more sort of like old school Titans are up in arms and saying, what's it come to? Now we are guiding ourselves by the stars. Humanity has always guided itself by looking at the stars and watching the stars. There is like this vast like history, like it's more than like 2,000 years old. So I also admire very much the fact that younger generations, they just don't care as to what the older generations are saying about astrology. They're like, yeah, no, we're just gonna do what we want, and we're gonna understand this thing and tap into it and use it. And it's become common, sort of like it's part of like day-to-day conversations. It's become part of their common language. So throughout the duration of the Pluto and Aquarius transit, I would expect that to expand. Aquarius is this sign of being very kind of like open to innovation, to new ideas, to new ways of doing things, to new ways of looking at the world. So Pluto comes in and says, okay, we're gonna sort of like intensify this. And here is where people like you, Emilio, and those younger than you will probably come in.
Before today's transmission, I wanted to take a minute to let you in on something that could change your life. If you've been doing the inner work and still feel like you're walking this path alone, you're not the only one. Most spiritual spaces give you endless content to consume, but not a tribe to grow with. That's why we created The Deep Dive, a living spiritual ecosystem designed to help you grow in community, rhythm, and real embodiment. Right now, our members are embarking on a journey exploring a core spiritual and practical teaching through daily activations, live community gatherings guided by me and our facilitators, and also participating in sacred challenges that are designed to help you live your practice and bring it to life. You'll be surrounded by seekers and leaders who've decided that they're done doing this work in isolation. If you're ready to find your people, visit the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now, and I'll see you inside. And you were mentioning how it is a tool for our day-to-day life. There's also a very applicable branch of astrology that you speak on, which is the electional astrology, that I wanted to bring to the surface there, because it is about, starting new endeavors and new projects. Especially, I feel like a lot of us go into a burst of wanting to start something new when we're around the new year. And, this will be out by the time we're approaching the end of the year, the start of 2026. What can you tell us about that branch of astrology in terms of starting up something new projects, new endeavors, whatever it is that you feel right now is aligned for a lot of people with the energies that we're seeing in the planets?
In the collective. I love electional astrology. I feel like it's one of the most straightforward, practical, applicable branches of astrology. Essentially, I always say this to people: we have free will. If today you want to go climb a mountain, Emilio, you can do that regardless of what the planets are doing, regardless of where the moon is. You can just go and climb your mountain. But the universe, nature, everything follows cycles. Right? Everything is born, it grows, it peaks, it starts dying, and then sort of like the wheel turns once more. So you want to work to make the most out of your life. Ideally, you would want to work in alignment. You'd want to work in alignment with the energies of the cosmos. And that's where electional astrology comes in. Judith Hill, which is like, she's one of my absolute favorite astrologers out there and teacher and guide. She says something along the lines of, when the arrow has left the bow, it has already traced its arc. So you apply that to electional astrology and you say, okay, I want to launch a book. You can launch it during, let's say, a harmonious and auspicious transit through your third house of writing, or maybe through your ninth house of publishing, or You can launch it when Mercury is retrograde in your 4th house of home, family, and living situation. And if you do that, you might have all sorts of issues at home. Your computer might break down. The internet might die all of a sudden. And you're like, what is happening with my book launch? Why on earth is it not taking off? And that's where astrology comes in. So we essentially carve time. We are sculptors of time, and we select the most auspicious time for a new endeavor to take shape, to take place, because anything that we do has a birth chart, you could say. So if you get married, you are going to have a birth chart for the marriage itself, as if it were a separate entity. If you launch a business, the business is going to have a birth chart. Everything has its own moment of birth. Everything has its own seed moment. And based off of the principle of the arrow has left the bow, it has traced its arc, the seed moment shows how things are likely to evolve based off of that incipient kind of stage. Can we influence it further down the line? Of course we can, but we want to make our lives, ideally we'd want to make our lives easier, not harder, because life already is quite challenging
unless you're a Virgo, right?
Unless you need problems to solve and you've got a lot of Virgo in your chart and you get a lot of fulfillment out of fixing things. Absolutely. No, we need Virgos to like fix things for us, because otherwise where would we be? So that's where electional astrology comes in. And sometimes it can be something like really straightforward, really easy. Let's say you have an important conversation that you want to, like schedule with your boss, and you look at the transits for the day, and maybe you want to choose a day when the moon is in a harmonious aspect to Mercury. And the conversation flows very kind of like easily and intuitively, and there's a good vibe. Or maybe a day when Venus is in conjunction with Mercury, and the other person is more inclined to say yes because they're in a great mood. You don't want to go have a conversation about your salary when Mars is in opposition to Mercury, because maybe they haven't eaten and they are a little bit on edge, and they're gonna kind of reject whatever it is that you're trying to put forward to them. So it can be taken obviously to a professional level, the electional astrology that I do as a professional astrologer, where you kind of like sit down, you select the most auspicious time periods, you create literally a chart for the event with like different ascendants, also based off of your own natal chart. But also regular people who are not astrologers, if they read a little bit about astrology and they understand the basic principles, they can make use of electional astrology. And that's sometimes something that I've heard people do with the information that I share in my monthly horoscopes and the kind of like monthly updates, the full moon, the new moon. They say, oh, I write down in my calendar that on this day, Mars is opposing Neptune. So maybe it's not a great day to go for like a 20-mile run, because maybe I'm gonna feel faint and dizzy and I might slip on the road. So people have told me that they use these dates that I share as a form of electional astrology, and that's a great way to do it. Indeed. Yeah.
This topic also plays into destiny and free will in a way, because the way that I'm also right now processing that is there a way that we can influence our life path or our soul's original intention by choosing when, where, and with who we do things in that way? Or how do you see it? Because I know your channel is called Written in the Stars. So are there some things that aren't written in the stars that we can actually influence through our free will and our actions here? Or how do you see that?
I would absolutely say that there are. Otherwise, what would be the point of this whole thing? If we are just at the mercy of fate, then why bother? So I don't believe we are fully at the mercy of fate. I do believe that we all have a certain set of soul intentions that we incarnate with. So our soul has chosen to experience certain lessons, to experience certain journeys. I do believe that we carry a certain degree of karma, and that's probably like a whole different topic altogether. I agree with like a I don't know if he's famous, but he's like probably one of the most well-known occultists of our day, Liam Christopher. He says that you cannot escape karma. So karma is it's gonna happen. It's kind of like something that you carry with you. What you can do with your free will is decide how you deal with it, is decide how you respond to it, how you react to it to an extent. We're all born in a specific set of circumstances, in a specific family. So you could say that that's part of our karma. The body that we're born in is part of our karma. So we can think of like people with maybe genetic kind of health issues, for example. Did they choose to be in that body? I mean, if you ask them, yeah, they're like, probably not. I don't want to be in this body. I want to be completely and totally healthy. So you could say that indeed there are aspects of our life that we don't have a say over. And a big part of these are the ones that have been sort of like given to us, our roots, our history, our body. What we do from then on, that's a different story altogether. So the natal chart does show us, to an extent, the cards that we have been dealt, our karma. I always say that the astrology is going to manifest itself regardless of whether we're conscious of it or not. So karma is going to play out if we live life on autopilot, and if we just go about our lives and act almost kind of like unconsciously. We don't make intentional choices. Of course, things are going to play out in what feels like a very karmic way, because sometimes that's taken as meaning fated. But if we understand our astrology, if we understand the circumstances that we were born in, if we understand our soul's lessons, I believe we can work with the astrology. I believe we can channel the energies in our chart in their highest potential. And I think probably one of the most straightforward examples is the planet Saturn. So Saturn is called the Lord of Karma because generally it shows our number one testing ground. That's where we have homework. That's where we have challenges. That's where we have blocks, obstacles. That's where we feel behind. That's where we feel like we're not as good as other people. So Saturn's going to show you exactly where your blockages lie. Saturn also shows you exactly where your work lies. You cannot sort of bypass Saturn. You can't say, I don't want to do the work here, because it's constantly going to bring up difficulties. If you do, it's constantly going to block you from moving forward with your life. It will repeat itself in the form of problems, generally. So the best way to get over it is through it. So you need to understand where your Saturn is, what sign it's in, what aspect it's making in your natal chart. Right now, because Saturn is in Pisces. So folks who have Saturn in Pisces are going through their Saturn return. Saturn in Pisces at a collective level has a lesson of, well, a few lessons in particular. It needs to kind of accept whatever is not in its power to control. Saturn loves control, and Pisces is a sign that has to do with allowing things to happen, with surrendering, with going with the flow. So in so many cases, with clients, with friends around me who have Saturn in Pisces, I've noticed this sort of like issue during the Saturn in Pisces transit where something happened in their life and they couldn't do anything about it. They're like, I'm completely powerless. I have no influence over this. And they're very frustrated. I'm like, that's the lesson. You just have to wait for it to resolve itself. Or maybe you have to embrace the fact that you also have certain vulnerabilities and maybe weaknesses, you can call them, and accept help. Saturn in Pisces generally has a lesson of coming to terms with their feelings, their emotions, their own feeling of being vulnerable, of feeling powerless. It generally needs to work on the mental health and the emotional health side of things a great deal. So the blocker is generally of an emotional nature. Pisces is a water sign, and wherever water is involved, you have to go into the space of feelings and emotions and that sort of realm. It can also struggle with a spiritual path. Pisces is a very spiritual sign, as is Sagittarius, and it's in its own sort of like different way. They're both ruled by Jupiter. So if there is kind of like a feeling of, what's the point of all of this? What is the meaning of all of this? That could be Saturn in Pisces saying, well, you have to look for meaning beyond the mundane, beyond the practical aspects of life. In Pisces, Saturn generally also has a duty of helping those who cannot help themselves. Pisces is a very charitable sign. So Saturn comes in and it brings the homework, and it says, okay, what are you doing for those who are suffering? Are you doing anything? Or are you just kind of like watching and thinking, oh, it's not my business. This doesn't affect me. I'm not involved. It's their issue. I'm like, no, it affects us all. It's like, it absolutely affects us all. And you're part of the all. You can't live your life in a silo. So that's just one example of where you can work with the astrology, but you can't bypass it. So you have free will to an extent, a sort of like limited container, you could say. And let's also face it, a lot of people do live their lives on autopilot. And as much as they think that they have free will, they are actually guided by they're kind of like conditioning from early childhood, all sorts of like subconscious patterns that they're not aware of, that they've maybe sort of like absorbed or inherited from their family, from their sort of environment that they evolved in, or that they were raised in. So we like to think that we have free will, but we're actually very predictable.
What do you mean by that?
If you look at someone's chart, you can sort of say, this is probably what you're going to choose based off of how their chart is configured. Can they choose differently? Can they kind of completely surprise you and say, I don't care. I'm just going to like throw something at the wall and yeah, you didn't see it coming. Yes, absolutely. Do people do it? Rarely.
Just take 10 grams of mushrooms and then that natal chart is out the window.
Well, the expansion of consciousness, that's a whole different ball game. But I always say to people, listen, this might be your proclivity. This is what you might be inclined to do. Is this good for you? Is this productive? Is this going to lead to more of what you've been experiencing so far? And are you happy with what you've been experiencing so far? If yes, keep on doing it. If no, you have to learn to act out of character. That's what I kind of like tell the people that I work with. You are not forced to keep on making the same choices, even though this might be accessible to you. This might feel comfortable to you. It's the dreaded comfort zone. It's the dreaded familiar choice. Apparently, we're hardwired from a neurological perspective for familiarity, not for happiness. We all think we want happiness, but actually our psyche wants familiarity because it's safe. So, yeah.
Yeah, in that segment, you were just talking about how we can work with astrology. Another thing that we could really start to work with that is tied to astrology are the elements. And I want to pull up a quote of yours that is, there is no spiritual evolution without mastering the earth element. So starting out with the element of earth, why do you feel that is so related to our spiritual evolution, the expansion of consciousness?
This is the topic that I really love. So you're going to have to stop me from talking at one point.
I don't need to. If you're excited about it, I am too.
I love it. I feel like a lot of people, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of people have misunderstood the whole concept of spirituality. And maybe it's like religion's fault, or who knows whose fault it is. It doesn't matter. We're not pointing fingers. But we were taught, or we were told, that the 3D reality, the body, the flesh, is not spiritual. You have to escape the body. You have to not be attached. You have to restrict the body and its desires and its needs. And the body is dirty or ugly or whatever has been kind of like thrown about. No. The cornerstone of spiritual evolution is the strong foundation of Earth. Have you ever met people? Maybe I imagine you might have, Emilio. Have you ever met people who are so caught up in their spiritual kind of like journeying, and they're like, I'm doing this retreat, and I'm meditating with this kind of like person, and I'm doing all of this like jazz, and I'm having all of these experiences, but their life is in complete shambles. They don't know where they're going to have their next meal from, and it's not because they've vowed to be kind of like poor. It's not a like vow of poverty or whatnot. They are in all sorts of like toxic relationships. Their body is completely unhealthy, and they're like looking for this great spiritual awakening. No, you have to have a solid foundation of getting your material life in order, because the body is the temple. It all starts with the body. You have to be healthy. You have to look after yourself. You have to eat properly. You have to be careful what you put into the body. You have to keep the body in movement. And only then can you have those spiritual experiences that go beyond the body, that transcend the body, and it's not going to throw your life into complete chaos. The danger with having these out of the body experiences spiritually is if you're not grounded, your life is going to be a total and complete and utter mess, ultimately. And you've mentioned the elements. We do work with the plane of the earth is sort of like governed by 4 elements. Number 1, earth, water, fire, and air. It's not just water. It's not just feeling. It's not just air. We're so caught up in the air element. We always kind of like, we read all the books. We are all sort of like armchair occultists. And of course, I'm generalizing. We're not. But there's so many people out there who read all the books and like talk to all the people. And the reality is that air is nothing without implementing it again into the practical, into the earth element, which is your 3D reality. You have to live it. You have to practice it. You have to live by it. So it all starts with the element of earth, and then you work your way up. So you work your way up to the air element. So you're absorbing new ideas. You work your way up to the water element, to the space of the realm of like feelings and desire. Then you go up to the fire element, which is the element of creation and destruction. It's the element of the will. So if you have too much fire and you don't have that much earth in your life, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have all sorts of experiences that are going to be like this wild ride, this wild adventure that might ultimately burn you out, and again leave you in a place of feeling dismantled. So you have to have them all, and the earth is the foundation. So I hope I've explained it well.
And what if someone's looking at their natal chart and they see that they might be having like a missing element of like, oh, I don't have any air, I don't have any fire in my chart? What do you tell those people? 2 things. And it actually happens quite a lot for someone to lack an element. So that means they don't have any personal planets in that element and whatnot. I say surround yourself with people who have that element strong. So I'm going to give my example. I don't lack fire, but I only have 1 planet in fire. I love fiery people. They are like, they're awesome. I love to surround myself with them. I have the best time. I have the most amount of fun with them. And I always sort of like look them out, and they're kind of like this immense sort of self-sustaining ball of energy. I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's make it happen. So surround yourself with people with with your missing element. I've also noticed that this happens a lot in couples. So if one person lacks air, they naturally gravitate towards a partner that has a lot of air. So they kind of like complement each other nicely. Is it possible that the other person is going to drive you nuts a little bit? Yes, it is possible, because they have something that you don't have, and you're maybe a little bit triggered by it, and subconsciously you're sensing that you're missing that. So first thing, people. Secondly, engage in activities that allow you to consciously connect with that element. So for instance, my sister, she doesn't have any water in her chart. She's an artist. So she, like, what she does literally allows her to express her feelings and her emotions. Water is the realm of like feeling and emotions. She is also a DJ. So again, she's in that space of like the imagination, the feelings, the like kind of like connecting with an audience and so on. If
Air is actually very funny because I've met a lot of people who don't have air in their natal chart, and they act as if they do on steroids somehow. So they read all the books, they take all the classes, they're always studying, they're always like engaged in like some sort of like intellectual endeavor. So I feel like the missing air element almost kind of like tends to like naturally kind of like compensate for itself. Those people feel like I have to do airy things. So do airy things if you don't have air. Do earthy things if you don't have earth. Spend time in nature. Get a pet. Look after your physical body. Remember to sleep. Remember to eat. So you have to put intention. So it can be overridden, the fact that you don't have an element. It doesn't mean that you're at the mercy of, oh God, I'm lacking fire, so I'm always going to be a really pessimistic individual who doesn't have any faith in humanity, and that is it. I am doomed. Does that answer your question?
It does, for sure. And I know that a while back you did an interview with Yahoo where you were asked if astrology could have predicted the pandemic. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that regarding using astrology as a predictive tool to look out into these world events that haven't happened yet. I know that's much more like an Eastern approach with Vedic, and they use a lot of predictive tools there. But how do you see it in terms of a lot of people right now that are tuning into this? They're probably going to want to know, what can we expect for 2026 or in the next coming months? And how does astrology play into that? So I'll give you the floor.
Good question. I do believe to an extent the transits of the slow moving planets, which is something that you've mentioned, Emilio, they can indicate what sort of trends are starting to take shape at a societal level, at a collective level. There's some planets that are not necessarily that friendly in their manifestation, let's say, but there is a saying in like Western esotericism, outwardly corrosive, inwardly solar. So we have these experiences on the outside world that are really like difficult and challenging, and on the inside they're meant to help us connect with kind of like our inner light, to help us find resilience and strength. I don't believe 2026 is going to be as as groundbreaking as we maybe kind of like expect it to be, at least until the, let me just check the date when this is happening, at least until the second half of the year, when the North Node also goes, the transiting North Node also goes into Aquarius. And Pluto's going to be there, the North Node is going to be there, and they're going to come together in 2027. So I believe 2027 is probably going to be a much more disruptive year than 2026. Yes, 2026, there will probably be some big changes. Some of them are probably going to have something to do with people's work. So there will probably be some, like, again, we've seen them this year. We're going to see, again, like mass sort of like restructurings. We're going to see new ways of working starting to take shape. I'm looking at Saturn and Neptune coming together in that space. So Neptune kind of like brings in new ideals when it comes to Saturn, which is duty and responsibility and how we go about our kind of practical like burdens, so to speak. Uranus and Pluto are going to trine each other. So that's a harmonious aspect. We're probably going to see innovation being implemented at a mass level really quickly, and especially innovation in the space of technology, in the space of the digital world, in the space of communications, in the space of transportation. So that might actually feel exciting. I will say. As the North Node, second half of the year, moves into Aquarius, there may be this sort of like focus on, for the next year and a half, so 2026, 2027, on scientific developments. So kind of like scientific breakthroughs and innovations. 2020 was a very disruptive year, and we're not going to see anything of that magnitude, at least if you ask me, in 2026. I know some astrologers are going to say, "Oh no, like she's completely missed the mark," but I do believe the changes are going to be maybe a little bit more gentle because they are happening in the sphere of the intellect and in the sphere of ideas. Again, the strongest manifestation for people who are watching this in terms of their day-to-day lives is probably going to be connected with the way that they work, ultimately. So that would be the number one change that I would prepare for 2026, and major disruption 2027, especially. Uranus in Gemini next year is sort of like prodding us to learn new things, new ideas, new information, like new ways to use our mind, our ability to kind of like interpret and analyze. So I would be open to learning new things. I would be open to onboarding new classes, new courses, and learning to utilize whatever tools are coming up in novel ways to well, some say to simplify our lives, some say to completely disconnect us from our humanity, but we'll have to wait and see how they're used in a nutshell.
In other words, we could say that 2026 is the calm before the storm in that sense.
You could say that. You could say that, yeah.
And usually when we have those calmer periods of our life, when we look back, they were actually helping us prepare for those bigger moments. And I know you just mentioned some ideas of how we can start utilizing the energies of this next year. What else would you like us to know around what will actually be prepared for by 2027 and utilizing the energies in that sense to be able to, when 2027 hits, what are we, getting our training ground for?
Be prepared to have your mind blown. Whatever you thought was real and true, and however you thought the world worked, and however you thought we should go on about our lives, be prepared for new discoveries. Again, to me, it feels like we have to be very open-minded. And the reality is that a lot of people are not open to new ideas, not open to new ways of thinking, not open to having their beliefs challenged. They are immensely attached to their beliefs. It's like a huge ego thing. It's like, oh, I need to be right. No, you don't need to be right. It's okay to discover that you did not have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So if you want to make your lives easier, allow the novelty to come in and be open to it mentally and intellectually. And don't say no just because it's new, just because you haven't given it a shot. Do not reject the new, because the new is going to be thrown at you with a lot of force from 2027 onward. So that's why we are indeed in a stage of preparation, 2026. And I believe it's probably going to be less intense, but then things will be adopted at a mass level where we're not necessarily going to have a say as to whether we like it or not. It's not a matter of like, do you like it? It's like, no, you just have to roll with it because it's happening. That's it.
What's interesting is that the more we explore the stars or space, we're discovering so much more about the cosmos. And an example of that would be there have been newer planetary discoveries like Sedna, Aries. Now we have this phenomenon of the 3-eye atlas entering our solar system, crossing the sun in a few days. So what do you feel that will do to collective consciousness? Because I know you've said that the planets represent archetypal energies. Right. As new things come into our solar system, maybe we discover new planets, maybe some comets or interstellar objects enter. What is that doing to consciousness in itself?
I think it's challenging the limits of the kind of like known universe and how we thought the world worked and how we thought we should function. And from a symbolic perspective, yes, I do believe there's probably going to be new planets discovered. There's probably going to be new kind of like planetary bodies discovered. It will definitely take years, decades for those symbolic associations to kind of to capture sort of like people's imagination and to be planted as seeds in our subconscious and to to evolve as thought forms that then function energetically. So yes, indeed, you might discover, like, there may be a new planet that is discovered tomorrow. It might not be until, like, I don't know, 50 years from now, until we have, at a collective level, connected with that energy and absorbed, symbolically speaking, what that represents. That's been actually the case with Chiron, who's sort of like this kind of like planetoid, I don't know how it's classified right now, like astronomically. And it's been quite a recent discovery. And because symbolically people immediately connected with the symbolism of the wounded healer for Chiron, it's sort of like been absorbed in the collective subconscious. And now you actually look at charts. Judith Hill was talking about this. She's also a medical astrologer. She's like, you look at charts and indeed you think about Chiron, you think about a wound, and you actually can notice in people's charts that it speaks to a place of maybe like vulnerability, a place of feeling misunderstood, sometimes a place of like physical weakness, or like some sort of a physical wound. And it's only a recent discovery, but somehow humanity has connected with it. So that's probably going to be the way in which things evolve also with the newer planetary bodies. Our consciousness is going to expand. The universe is going to expand. I mean, everything, like as above, so below, everything is connected. As within, so without.
Yeah. This question that just came through is even blowing my mind, but is it consciousness extracting meaning from what we're perceiving, or are what we're seeing, like the planets, conscious in and of themselves, and they're revealing to us the meaning?
Good. That is indeed a question. I mean, that's the question basically is, how does astrology work ultimately?
Basically.
Yeah. Which we can speculate. We don't know for sure, again, because we cannot sort of like measure it and kind of like bring it into a lab and do tests on it. There is this school of thought that says that planets are, and the movements of the planets sort of correspond to greater intelligences that exist in the universe. And they maybe do not, how should we talk about this?
Aliens.
Not necessarily, but these intelligences that we can't necessarily maybe they're like 5D, 6D, whatever D creatures. We can't see with a naked eye. Again, we don't go on Mars and we're like, oh, here's the sort of like the ruler of Mars, and Mars is pulling the strings and it's making us angry on planet Earth because it's the planet of anger and conflict. But there are forces in the universe, let's call them intelligences, that seem to work in alignment with the movements of these planets. So the planets are sort of omens, you could say, or like messengers, let's put it this way. They're not the intelligence itself. It's probably like a force much greater than the planet itself, but the planet sort of like seems to move and kind of like radiate energy in alignment with these greater unseen forces. That's how I look at it. Now, yes, also we attribute, I mean, humans have been watching the stars and the planets for thousands of years, and they've compiled the stats, and they said, okay, when the eclipse is happening, it looks like an important world leader or like tribe leader or whatever it was at the time is having a bad time and is kind of wounded in battle. And they've sort of like created these correspondences, and therefore they've created thought forms. So thought forms are sort of these entities, we could call them, on the mental plane, and on the astral plane, actually, they're not on the mental plane, that are fed by our mental energy. So if enough people think that something's gonna happen when a comet crosses the sky, then guess what? If we all channel our like energy in that direction, it's probably gonna happen. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy. So we don't know if they operate as thought forms, or if there's actually like greater intelligence that of course have a mind of their own and do their thing, and they impact us energetically. I mean, the moon impacts the waves. It's super kind of straightforward. So that is indeed the question. That is the mystery.
Yeah. It's actually one of the most simple yet like best explanations I've heard about astrology, because you're simplifying it into the way we create thought and the way we actually create reality. Because you said that astrology is actually based on the law of correspondence. I'd love to go a little bit deeper into that, as the law of it's a universal law. What does it mean, and how astrology and everything that we create is based on that.
I love talking about this. So essentially, everything exists on different kind of like planes, on different levels. It exists on the material level. It exists on the emotional level. So we kind of like associate like a feeling to it, an emotion to it. So let's say you see, I don't know, like a cute puppy in the street, and like on the material level, it's a dog. On the emotional level, it sort of like corresponds to cuteness and a feeling of joy and a feeling of I don't know, like openness towards like new experiences and so on. And we kind of like start drawing parallels between an object and, of course, the meanings and its various correspondences that it has. And a lot of correspondences can be man-made. I mean, think about the olive branch. Like, why is an olive branch the symbol of peace? I mean, I don't know, like whoever came up with this, like, here's an olive branch. It could have been like a whatever branch, like a cherry branch, like a cherry tree branch. But you kind of like start making these associations, and then they have a life of their own, so to speak. In astrology, we do have very strong correspondences with the planetary energies. Especially. And these are really, really important. If you're going to create your reality, you have to know your correspondences. And I do believe you can create your reality. You can be the magician of your own reality, for lack of a better expression, but you have to know your correspondences. So for example, Saturn corresponds to the color, or the color black corresponds to Saturn. Let me put it this way. Saturn, which is the great taskmaster, the planet of authority, the kind of like the planet of like hard work, of like things that endure, that stand the test of time, the elderly, the planet of agriculture, and so on. So if you want to turn into a more Saturnian figure in your life, if you want to be treated as more of an authority, if you want to have more gravitas, you dress in black. That it's as simple as that. Let's say the sun yellow corresponds to the sun, because yellow is a very like visible, like golden is like the golden hue is a very kind of like visible hue, and the sun is all about the spotlight and drawing kind of like attention and like getting visibility and attention. So you can use that in the choices that you make on a day-to-day basis. And that can sort of expand to anything that you do throughout your life. What sort of planetary energy do you want to align yourself with? Do you want to be more Venusian? Do you want to have more pleasure in your life? Well, in that case, you have to kind of like create a Venusian space for yourself. So maybe emphasize harmony and balance and aesthetics and beauty and surround yourself with beautiful objects. Again, I read this in a book. Someone much smarter than me said it, but I don't remember who it was that said it. The aspects of something call forth the essence of that thing. So that is how correspondences work. So it's all about designing your own life with intention. You're the architect of your own life. What are you calling forth? That is the question. I mean, it applies to everything. If we live in a space that is completely chaotic and there's mess everywhere and the dishes haven't been washed, I mean, no shade, but what do you think you're going to draw forth? It's going to be decay. It's going to be more chaos. It's going to be more like a lack of structure. So that is the law of correspondence in a nutshell.
I wanted to share with you an interesting synchronicity. I was just on a 10-hour flight from Madrid back home here in Colombia, and I didn't want to sleep on the flight so I wouldn't get jet lag. So I was like, let me just watch some movies, read a book, whatever. And I watched two movies, which I hadn't watched in a while, from the same series. Harry Potter, Order of the Phoenix,
Yes.
and then the Sorcerer's Stone or the Philosopher's Stone, the first one. And then when I came to get prepared for the interviews I have this week, you were the first one. And when I opened up your YouTube channel and I started researching and getting into your videos, the Harry Potter intro music comes on. And then you just said that you can become the magician of your reality. So I'd love to know, on a personal aspect, how does that all tie in terms of being a magician and your relationship to Harry Potter and why it's become part of your brand as well?
I have to say, Harry Potter was the book that actually got me into reading when I was a kid. So before that, I had no interest, no appetite in reading, and it was the first sort of like, obviously it was a series of books, and once I started reading it, I'm like, okay, I guess now I'm a reader. I like reading. What do you know? So it's always going to have a very special place in my heart. The other thing is it got me in like totally and completely in love with London. And here I am many years later after I read the book living in London. So speaking of synchronicities, I suppose I was always, and I continue to be drawn and attracted, which is probably why I'm an astrologer. And I do have an interest in like esoteric practices and the occult and so on. I've always been drawn to the aspects of life that were not obvious, that were hidden. And I've always felt that there's more to life than meets the eye. And whatever we don't see, for whatever reason, I thought it has power. And my journey through life has led me to that conclusion. Whatever we don't see, whatever is hidden, does have power. There's always some sort of like power kind of like guiding our lives and directing our lives in some shape or form. I mean, Harry Potter is an amazing book, and even if I feel like if I started reading it now, I would probably like devour it once again. But the premise of it was, you can affect your reality, and you can affect your reality via imagery, via words, via different practices, and I believe that's a really sort of like basic and simple truth that people are not aware of. I think it's a cliche to even mention this, but there's a reason why a spell is called a spell and why we spell things when we write. So it's called spelling. We always, with the risk of sounding very woo, we always cast spells with our words. Whatever we say, the word is the first step towards manifestation. That's why it's so important to not speak out loud, to not say the things that you do not want to see manifesting. And then you're asking yourselves like, why is this thing that I'm like so afraid of? Why is it happening? That's why it's so important to not constantly keep talking about your problems, because you are literally feeding the problems mental energy for them to carry on and amplify and keep on messing your life. So that's probably one of the most basic ways of being the magician of your own life. Use words with intention. And it also it can be used in a positive manner, the way you speak to yourself. The words that you use when talking about yourself. Your brain can't make the difference between, oh, I'm being ironic and I'm calling myself dumb, and then my brain actually thinks, oh my god, maybe I am actually dumb. So like, am I dumb? Is this up for discussion? Speak nicely, speak kindly about yourself. Be a friend to yourself first and foremost, both in the outer speech, but also in the internal speech. Secondly, everything, like we've talked about, has a correspondence and like energetically speaking. So when you dress, you're sending across a message, both to yourself as well as to others. That's again, it's a very kind of like powerful, it's a very powerful thing. When you look after your body, it's a very powerful thing, because it means that the message that you're sending through is, I'm important, I matter, I am valuable, I am worthy. And then our subconscious is set to create reality. The subconscious is actually the magician of our lives as much as we try to be intentionally. So whatever it is that you feed the subconscious will manifest in your life. The subconscious is the operating system. And the subconscious understands two types of things very kind of like very easily. It understands imagery. So it's very important what you watch and what sort of like imagery you surround yourself, what you surround yourself with, and also how you see yourself. That's why I said it's important how you dress. It's important what you see in the mirror. It's important to have beautiful imagery. I don't know, around the house and so on. It understands imagery, and it also understands repetition. So what you repeat is going to be absorbed in the subconscious, then it becomes part of your operating system, and then you subconsciously gravitate towards making choices and having life experiences that match whatever has been embedded in the subconscious. Oh, and maybe another very special type of imagery that the subconscious understands is symbolism. That's why symbols are so powerful and important, because when you're going to see, I don't know, the sign of electricity that I have, the thunderbolt on my
which interestingly enough, the logo of our membership, the deep dive, is the lightning bolt. So another alignment right there.
There you go. I had no clue. I absolutely had no, I didn't notice it, but more synchronicities. So yes, when people kind of like see this, you can think of a few things, but you can think immediately of electricity. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to go into details. You're like, oh, you know what this does. It's the thunderbolt. Da, 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 da. It's like the subconscious immediately picks it up. That's why, I mean, I've mentioned tattoos. Tattoos are hugely important. They're both symbolic and they use imagery, and you look at them, unless they're, I don't know, on your back or somewhere where you don't see them. You look at them all the time. So only tattoo on yourselves, folks. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I would only recommend tattooing the things that you want to have more of in your life.
Yeah. The Just Happened podcast logo, the Written in the Stars logo.
There you go. That's a good starting point.
What does the lightning bolt activate in you every time you see it and on your day-to-day basis?
I feel like it's a nudge to my modern planetary ruler, which is Uranus, the modern ruler of Aquarius. I'm an Aquarius sun, and it's that sort of like flash of insight, that flash of like kind of like that light bulb idea, that light bulb moment. And I feel like it also represents the way that I operate. So I operate sort of, I have these like bursts of energy, and then I'm like, but then I have like this aha moment where I do a lot, and I don't know, maybe there's a neurodivergent term for that, but we're not going to get into that. But I'm owning it, which is why I got the tattoo in the first place.
And I know you've been a full-time consultant astrologer for over a decade now, and I wanted to ask you, because there's probably in a decade of work, you know, you've also hit very important milestones in your career, 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. What has been the most humbling lesson you've had when you decided to go out and actually be a full-time astrologer for your career path?
It was such a journey, and I always love kind of like looking back, because I say that astrology has chosen me somehow. I ultimately ended up choosing astrology, but to start with, it was something that sort of like came to me. I started studying astrology like very early in my 20s, and it was always something that I was like really into and super passionate about. And I never thought when I started that it would become my career. That was never the intention. And it was only much later that I realized I can actually do this. What's always been humbling, and what continues to be humbling, is, and it kind of like fuels me on this journey, is whenever people tell me that working with me one-to-one, and even listening to my videos, to my content, has helped them in any way. To me, that's always, I don't say this, again, maybe it sounds incredibly cheesy. I say it, I'm always, to an extent, I'm always surprised. I'm like, Really? I did that? That's amazing. It always creates so much, it sparks so much joy in my life to know that you've made the slightest sort of amount of difference in someone's life, that you've contributed in a positive way to someone's life. To me, that's it. That's what we're here for. At least that's what I'm here for. I mean, everyone can do that in their own way. There is a million ways in which you can contribute in a positive way to other people's lives. And I feel like I found mine, and it's always such a joy when people tell me that. So yes, folks, please do tell me that. If it ever happens again, I always receive it with like such welcome, such open arms.
Yeah, write it down in the comments. Write it down in the comments. And one thing that is interesting is you found this work of astrology in your 20s. Was there anything in your chart when you started to study it that kind of pinged you in the direction of, oh, I could be an astrologer because my chart is giving me the right, for base grounds or whatever foundations to do that?
Only really, really late did I look into that, because I felt like I was somehow kind of like led by others to do this, because I was doing this initially as obviously like a passion, as a pastime. And I did so much astrology for friends, for family, for like all sorts of people. And people would kind of like constantly ask me to do more of it. So I thought, okay, that's a great sign. Later, I looked into it, and indeed I've sort of studied the charts of other astrologers, dead, alive. There's an entire there's an entire database on different websites, AstroSeek, Astro.com. So you can see sort of themes in various astrologers' charts. Generally, there is some sort of a focus on the ninth house, which can play out as, of course, the ninth house is our connection with the divine, with God, with the higher power, with the universe. And people with focus on the ninth house generally act as a form of guide. They're guides to an extent. They don't necessarily have to be astrologers. They can be coaches. They can be mentors. They can work in, I don't know, like finance and banking and mentor other people. But generally, there is some form of focus on the ninth house. That's one thing. Secondly, lots of Aquarius energy. Like Aquarians do seem to, I mean, I don't know, we're just drawn to these like weird things and unconventional things, and we just want to do life differently, and here we are. So if someone if they would tell me, I don't know, in my 20s, oh, why are you doing this? This is kind of like so like niche and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, that's precisely why I'm into it, because it's not everyone's cup of tea. So we do like to be on the fringes somehow, and to kind of like find our own path on a more unconventional route. So Aquarian energy tends to be very drawn to astrology. And I have also noticed a focus on the eighth house. Now, the eighth house is kind of like the house of like psychological depth. So you could get into astrology, or you could get into psychology, for instance, or being a counselor. So these are sort of like the signatures. There's other signatures as well. If you have a prominent, let's say Jupiter on your ascendant or on your midheaven, you might be drawn to these topics that, again, help you make sense of what this life is all about, the greater sort of like meaning of things, our connection with the universe. A strong Neptune sometimes, although the Neptunian energy tends to be more kind of like drawn to practices like meditation, maybe the more sort of like the practices that transcend the 3D. Astrology is very, to an extent, it's very mental, it's very Saturnian. It's like it's got a lot of rules, there's a lot of order, you have to memorize a lot, you have to learn the correspondences. So it's very kind of like mind heavy. Neptunian folks are drawn more into the more kind of like mystical side of things. And you can be an astrologer and be very mystical as well. But I don't find that mystical people become necessarily astrologers. So those would be, my observations. And I'm curious if there's other astrologers watching us or people who are into astrology that maybe have found other chart signatures that could correspond to an attraction to this field.
Yeah, and there's some things that maybe even go beyond the astrology, and one thing that comes to mind for me is like doing this work requires a certain level of devotion and discipline and consistency. Like when I look on your channel, you have videos that go for 4 hours and a half of you just going for it. And I'm like, did she just talk for almost 5 hours about the horoscopes and the signs? Like that is devotion, right? In the same way, like how, for example, like people that are really devoted to their work, they show up consistently. So that is an aspect that I notice in how you're going about your work, is just the devotional piece, because not a lot of people can get in front of a camera for 4.5 hours and just put out some astrology wisdom. So that's huge.
I appreciate it. I do have to make a confession. I filmed them in 2 separate instances.
Okay, good. I was like, does she even go to the bathroom? Is she human? Does she drink water? Like
I stop and like I generally take a break. I don't film them in one go, purely because I think it's good to give your voice a rest as opposed to speaking for.
Good to know.
Yes. But yeah, I have gotten that question before, and people have asked me, isn't it hard? I'm like, it is, which is why I don't do it in one go. But to your point around devotion, I think whatever you do, you have to show up. And you have to show up consistently, and it has to be a discipline thing. It cannot be like a mood thing. I feel like it, I don't feel like it thing. It's like you have to be committed to your craft, whatever that is. It can be astrology, it can be anything else, but you have to keep at it. That's probably the only way in which you're gonna build things, and you're gonna see long-term results. So I'm honored that you brought this up.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, Rux, I have a feeling we're going to continue these conversations a lot down the line, especially as we get closer to these bigger years, bigger dates. Like, I can't wait to just weave with you together and spread this message. But I think for now, we'll wrap it up in this round 1, we'll call it. However, we end every show with a segment called the Final Trio, which are some questions that we ask at the very end. Before that, where would you send people to connect with you, to receive a reading from you, to work even deeper with you, and find you wherever that is? So where would you send people to that?
Straight to my YouTube channel, which is Written in the Stars by Rux. And in every single one of my videos, in the pinned comment and in the description box, they're going to find whoever wants to work with me one-to-one, because that is what I do on a day-to-day basis. I work with clients one-to-one. There's a link to my website, so that's where you can purchase my my services. Yeah.
Beautiful. And we'll include all the links in the show notes as always. For the final trio, the first 2 questions are personalized to the guest, and the last one we ask at the end of every show. The first one I had for you is, what is one truth about astrology that can only be felt and experienced, not taught?
Oh, I've never thought about this. It works if you keep track of it. You have to observe it. You have to see it play out in your life, and that's when you're really gonna get it. You can learn the theory of it. You can read the books. You can take the classes. You can practice on other people's charts. But when you see it actually playing out in your life, I feel like it always hits you. It's like, oh, bam, that's it. There it is at play. And I feel like it's got the most powerful effect when you see it at work in your own life.
It goes beyond the theory. and putting it into a felt experience, embodiment as well.
Exactly. Well said.
I asked this question to another astrologer, really good friend of mine. I saw you followed her on Instagram, Deborah Silverman. She's amazing.
Yeah.
But I did ask her this question, and I'm curious to know your response as well. And that is like a fill in the blank. So I'm going to read a sentence and then you complete the sentence. No matter what happens in 2026, remember ...
You're smarter than you think. Stop underestimating yourselves, people. You got this. You can do this. You can do new things. You can learn new things. You can absorb new information. You've got new ideas. You can be more creative than you think. So yeah, don't underestimate what you've got.
Love that. And this last question, I'm actually going to preface it with a pre-question that I was meaning to ask you, but we went in a different direction. But that is, it's all about the new children and the younger generations right now, especially the ones that are being born right now under the newer cosmic alignments between now and 2032. It's a whole generation, but I'm curious to know how you feel that these children being born now are going to have their own flavor and bring their own magic and maybe their own secret sauce than other generations in the sense of how they're evolving humanity forward. What do you feel from a cosmic alignment perspective is in the cards for those, or written in the stars for those generations?
Oh God, I think we're not prepared for these, for how brilliant these children are going to be. Literally, from an intellectual perspective, from a skills perspective, from a mental perspective, from the way that their brains work, we're kind of like. And I'm not an expert on this topic at all, so I do want to preface it by saying that first and foremost. Neurodivergence is, if I'm not mistaken, defined as right now it's like, oh, your brain is not working as it's supposed to, so here you go, let's adjust it so that it works in alignment with what we know about the brain. Oh God, we are probably not prepared for how the brains of these kids are gonna work. So neurodivergent, maybe in the best of ways, in the most kind of like brilliant and like genius of ways, they're probably gonna be the inventors of the generations to come. They are probably going to completely kind of like turn upside down like old like paradigms of like thought and even like scientific paradigms. So I think we've got a lot to learn from them if we let them.
And this last question really ties into what you just said, because it's all about legacy and your legacy for the future generations. We call it the time capsule question, and it requires us to travel out into the future. And this is a future where the young generations of today, the ones being born right now, are going to be stepping more into leadership positions around the world. Mm-hmm. And you had the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule for these next generation of leaders that you could put in anything that your imagination can hold inside of this time capsule. It could be a physical object, a non-physical transmission, whatever you feel called to leave behind. But knowing that when they open this, they will download and receive all of the things that you feel are what's going to equip them to be the best leaders for this new epoch, this golden age, this new cycle of humanity that is coming forward. What would you leave behind?
Oh God, that is such an interesting question. So I thought I did not know where the question was going, and I thought I would leave them a message, and I literally was writing down the message. It's like, stop fighting each other. So that's where my thought went. Maybe they will already have reached this conclusion by the time they come into power. Hopefully. I feel like it's it's important to preserve the way nature, the place where nature is right now, and with the risk of sounding, I don't know, maybe like I'm speaking in a way that's out of my depth. I would leave them pictures of nature, of trees, of waterfalls, of forests, of tropical forests. That is the number one resource that we have to preserve, and I do hope they will understand that and prioritize that. And it looks like they most likely will. So capturing what nature looks like today, and at least maintaining that, if not hopefully taking much better care of that than the world is today. And I also thought about leaving them a tarot deck.
Oh, should we pull a card?
We can pull a card. Let me just gather all my cards.
What should we pull it for? What's the intention?
The messages that will guide the future leaders towards the highest and greater and greatest good of humanity. How does that sound? Let's see what comes up. Oh, beautiful card. The Judgment card. We have to be so careful what seeds we sow, because the time will come when we will kind of like reap the rewards or the negative outcomes of whatever it is that we have planted. So there will be a time of reckoning. Action and consequence. Of course, there's a lot more to this card than
the Libras are going crazy right now. The Judgment card.
Like I said, there's a lot more to this, but ultimately, everything that we do has an effect. Everything that we say has an effect. Every sort of like ounce of energy that we put in one direction or another, as much as we might not see it immediately. I feel like people are like so short-sighted in many ways. We want to see immediate effects. We want to see immediate results. The results will come. They will come. So plant your seeds, because maybe you're going to have to wait a few decades, but they will come, for better or for worse.
Rux, it's been an honor, a pleasure to co-create with you in this collaboration. I'm looking forward to, as I said before, many more of these. Thank you for saying yes to this invitation, and for just all of, I feel like we covered so much that, and there's so much more to cover as well, but thank you for this beautiful transmission, conversation, for giving us hope for what's to come. I'm inspired for the future, and for you having a really cosmic map of what is going on in the world right now, and sharing that with us for a higher perspective. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to continuing these for sure.
Thank you for having me, Emilio. It's been an absolute pleasure. Fellow Cancerian, although I know you're the Cancer sun, I'm the Cancer rising. So yeah, we're sort of like, we're sort of part of the same gang, the same tribe. I would love to come back, and like I said, it's been amazing to be here with you today for this transmission.
Beautiful. Until next time. Thank you.